Hey friends, we have an incredibly practical podcast today. How do we navigate this crazy world of media, social media, clicks, clickbait, sensationalized headlines, all of this stuff that's geared to create like emotional outrage in us when we are called as the body of Christ to be bridge builders, to be healers, to be peacemakers, to be salt, to be light. How do we make sure we navigate that in a way that actually produces biblical wisdom and justice in a world full of emotional reaction and chaos? That's what we're going to talk about in our podcast today. I think we can all relate, and I hope it's very, very helpful.
Hey, welcome to the Ron Johnson Discipleship Podcast.
We are so thrilled that you guys take part of your day. I don't know when you listen to this, if you're hear it on Thursday morning or afternoon or evening or whenever you're enjoying this, but we're so glad that you guys allow us to be involved in your lives, and hopefully the podcast continues to add value to you. We love your feedback. We appreciate the comments on our platform and your comments live and in person. If you worship with us here at Living Stones or have any interaction with us on Facebook or whatever other social media platform. But anyway, it's always an honor. We're humbled by your viewing. So thanks so much. We got a lot to talk about today. I just want to go back to say, hey, if you did not have a chance to listen to Pastor Andrew's message on Sunday, you gave me insight as to why I have had a goal of writing many, many books. I can't tell you how many outlines I have. And I told my wife, I said, Andrew just completely diagnosed my problem. I have lots of grandiose goals and bad habits. So that I heard so many people, though, talking about how practical it was moving out of that place of dreaming and actually getting into, traction and how important our daily habits are to getting us there. So I don't know if you had any comment on that, but I want to direct everybody, check out that last message. It was wonderful.
Well, I mean, you don't have bad habits you just don't have the brand new habits to support your new goals, which is write books.
Your ice cream illustration was great. There's nothing the matter with eating ice cream every night before you go to bed if your goal is to gain 30 pounds.
Yeah, it depends on what your goal is. So you're connecting the goal with the habit, right? And that's why I hear writers, people who are aspiring to write, they say, I just write 20 minutes a day. I write a line a day. Well, what's the point of that? It's because they're trying to create the habit. It's not because they recognize writing a line a day is going to get to, whatever it is. Yeah,
it's just, I like what you said too. Consistency always trumps intensity. We can have these little bursts, but it's that consistent effort day after day after day where you begin to see the gain. So that's what I need to do. I got to get that built into my schedule.
Yeah. I find that people reach their goal, they're just kind of boring. No fanfare, no Instagram posts.
Oh, you're right, because it's just that daily showing up.
Yep, daily showing up.
I've been doing the same thing with some of our health stacking goals.
Yeah.
I've been walking every morning. I get up, I go downstairs, I walk and on the treadmill, and it's been really, really excellent because I noticed that it's becoming easier, and I'm doing some interval training where it's a little harder, and I got an incline going on, and I'm not falling off the thing and gasping for air. Yeah. Although I'm not sure I'm with you yet on, when you're at that mode of training where you're struggling to breathe, that it's such a great feeling. I don't know. I think I've lost that feeling. Have you lost that feeling, man? But I do know what you're talking about, man. When you're hitting it and you're killing it.
Well, yeah. I mean, when you're working out at the gym, the soreness in your muscle.
Now that I relate to.
Yeah, you relate to that.
Lack of oxygen. I'm not quite there with you yet on the lack of oxygen, but I do like the systematic, consistent working out. It does pay dividends. Yeah. Did you notice my sport coat was fitting a little tighter? I don't want you staring at my biceps either during this podcast. I know I can be a great distraction to you. If you don't know what we're talking about, you do need to listen to the podcast. To the message on Sunday. It will shed a lot of light as to all of our bantering back and forth. But let's talk about something that I believe is really, really important, and that's how do we survive in this media-driven culture with all the sensational headlines and so forth and so on? How do we keep from getting sucked into, really unhealthy judgment? Like, we want to operate out of wisdom, a spirit of discernment. And how about this? We don't want to just be throwing gasoline on the cultural wars and the little echo chambers that probably we all live in it to some degree. We actually want to be bridge builders. We want to be peacemakers, not just peacekeepers, but peacemakers. We want to be involved in healing people. How about bringing our nation back together? How about promoting the lordship of Jesus? These are all things that the church should be a part of, salt and light. And if we are constantly reacting to media headlines, we're not going to be much help, really. I think we're just going to actually exacerbate the problem. And so I think we have a lot of really, really important things, to talk about this week. Why don't we start with a couple of headlines that kind of highlight what we're talking about? And the larger issue here would be, virtue signaling. What is that? And selective outrage. And we might not be able to get it all in. But let me give you an example of virtue signaling. By the way, Hollywood movie stars are really good at this because they have these events where they give each other awards and pat each other on the back, and then they give speeches, and they say sometimes some really dumb things. Let me give you some evidence here. This was Billie Eilish recently at the 2026 Grammys. She wore an Ice Out pin. And then she got up and said, "No one is illegal in America or any other place on stolen land." And then she said, "F ICE," which is a popular slogan for those on the left. But anyway, nevertheless, critics highlighted her $3 million plus Hollywood mansion that happens to be built on the ancestral Tongva land, name of an Indian tribe, and they called her remarks empty gestures that lacked tangible commitment. Even the Tonga tribe responded, calling it empty virtue signaling, given the lack of real-world action like land restoration. Like if she actually believed what she was saying, she would give her property to this tribe. But obviously that's not going to happen. But this is an example, kind of that knee-jerk, let's wear ice pins, let's say F ICE, and, let's come up with this one-line slogan that really doesn't show much constructive thinking or common sense or practical action steps or anything else. But it makes for a good clip, clickbait on social media.
I will argue it has a lot of practical action step. The practical action step is it makes people feel like illegal immigration should be legal. There should be that anytime you try to enforce immigration laws that you're doing something more wrong is because of this convoluted perspective. So it's interesting because she presents a principle that's not really livable because she's not living herself, right. And she actually doesn't believe it.
Right.
What she actually believes is, well, I don't know if she actually believes it, but the principle behind what she's saying is actually not designed to create the natural action, which is then we all give our house and our property, our land to the oldest ancestor we can find, which is convoluted in itself, because what does that even mean? Because every land's taken by somebody at some point. But the real result is people have a justifiable few-second clip backing to hate ICE and to not immigrate our immigration laws, which then allows unfettered immigration, illegal immigration, which then leads to congressional redistricting or voting that allows Democrats the same power.
The intended consequences or unintended consequences, depending on what side of the argument you're on, are huge.
There's a design purpose to what she says, but for a real person to look at what she says and judge her by her principles, it makes zero sense. But most people are not reasonable, and they don't think through first principles.
Well, speaking of not reasonable, let me give you another great example here. Leonardo DiCaprio and climate activism. He has been long praised for championing environmental causes, but critics point out that his heavy use of private jets and yachts, which black out much of his public climate righteousness. In other words, if you really were so concerned about the climate, you would not be, traveling here and there in your private jet, which is terrible for your carbon footprint. You would not be having your own private yacht, which I'm sure consumes a lot of gasoline, fossil fuel. There's a lot of things you wouldn't be doing. You wouldn't own a car. You'd probably be riding a bike, walking. In other words, it's the height of virtue signaling and hypocrisy when these folks stand up and do their little thing at their celebratory events.
But what they're really saying is these principles I'm saying, they're not really livable. Or they're really livable by you peons, but for us
we want you to live
elites,
that way. Yeah.
it's not really livable for us, or we don't really want to live it.
And we have highlighted, as I've taught the biblical worldview class many, many times, one of the key components of a worldview that is true. I mean, if you want to know if what you believe is actually true, it has to fit reality. And to your point, it has to be livable. So if you have all these crazy, wild beliefs and it sounds so great and you got your little pins on and everything, but in real life, if you can't live what you believe, then obviously what you believe is not true. Or you don't really believe it, that those convictions that you think you have are not really convictions. They're just sound bites.
So even that, what the scenario you just described, is prevalent in our educational systems, in which you have a lot of professors and teachers, not all of them, but a lot of them who teach ideas and principles that they have never lived or practiced and seen live to success. They just simply learned it from someone else who learned it from someone else. That's why some of the best teachers are practitioners. They are people who have actually been in the field. They have actually exercised this principle. They have tried this principle that's taught over years and says, you know what? This thing actually doesn't work. Yep. I have actually lived it out. And this is the principle that actually were practitioners, doers, who after, being successful in their career come back to education and teach the students. They are much more valuable because they actually lived it. They've done it. They tried it. They didn't just teach random principle. They said, naturally, I've tested this idea out myself and it works or it doesn't work.
Which we've talked about this push of Marxism and neo-Marxism, oppressors and the oppressed, all this Marxist language. You would think that Bernie Sanders would maybe go talk to somebody who actually lived in a Marxist, socialist, communist country and say, hey, I'm over here championing a lot of rhetoric and ideology, but you actually live there. Like, what was it like? These would be the most valuable voices, is to hear people who have actually lived outside of the United States. Like we talk about all these people, America, the whole system's corrupt, burn the thing down, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, wait, you came here, and most of the time the people doing that came here illegally. They're not full of gratitude. It's like, why don't you go back to your country then, where you weren't oppressed evidently, because you're here in our country and you're feeling oppressed. Why don't you go back home? That would make sense, but that's not what they're after. And it just shows you that their ideology is not, in alignment with their lives. It's not livable. It's not being practiced. Let's talk a little bit about how the media shapes our perception. Most media operates on the following principles. Number one is speed. Boom, they come out. Whoever comes out with the story the fastest, right, gets the most attention. They're trying to capture your attention. They're trying to produce an emotional reaction. Most of the time, the headlines or whatever's coming out is geared at increasing the polarization, not bringing us together. They have simplified narratives, so we're not giving the whole story or both sides of the story. And then the goal is conflict escalation, because that again is what drives media attention. So we've been saying this for years. The media is not our friend. There's an agenda there. There's activity taking place that is not geared to produce thoughtful reason, wise judgment, moderate behavior, et cetera, et cetera. So we saw this. And I guess, let's talk about the elephant in the room, no pun intended. But the latest episode of all this was the Trump video. Actually, it wasn't a video that came out to make our point. It was a screenshot of the Obamas in their faces superimposed over apes. Now, again, let's just be clear. That in and of itself is disgusting because it certainly looks like our president is a racist. He is going back to imagery that certainly attacks blacks. It fits right into the narrative that the left has been saying for the last, 6 or 8 years. Trump is a racist, Trump is a racist, Trump is a racist. And then when you actually press into that and say, okay, is this true? Give me some examples. What are the facts? Usually it's just rhetoric again because they're trying to attack him. Is that thing by itself virtuous and good, something that we should celebrate? Of course not. And I, as a pastor, we have a multi-ethnic congregation. In no way, shape, or form are we for racism. In fact, we show just the opposite. We have a kingdom perspective where we find our identity not in the color of our skin, but in our identity with Christ. And so all of those things, if left by itself, we should be outraged. But what we saw again was some of these things. Sensational framing, which, check that box. Partial quotes. There was a larger narrative there that we only got the partial. Selective clips. Yep, check that box. Emotional language. Yep, everything went straight to Trump's a racist. Implied motives. Trump hates black people. Outrage amplification. So now everybody's going to get stirred up, and the louder we scream against the video, the more virtuous we are. Tribal reinforcement. So it certainly caused both camps to become more entrenched. And I like this one, 2-minute hate cycles, where you've got these little clips that just stir everybody up, and all it does is create, more hatred. What's your take on that whole thing in light of, social media and some of these things we're talking about that actually, I noticed a lot of pastors, especially, that felt the need to instantly make a comment about something before we had any information about the total picture or what the truth actually was. I know you did some research into that. What was the deal behind that?
Based on my research, to me, this is just, I don't even want to talk about it because to me, it's just, anyways. Apparently, a staffer made a screen recording of some election integrity video, which is
that was a larger video, really about. And it wasn't just the Obamas that were in that video. No, Biden was in there.
No. That's not even the video. So you see, like most people don't even know what's actually going on. It was a complete different video about Atlanta, Georgia, election integrity. That's what the video is really about.
Okay.
So he's recording. Apparently, this is my understanding. He's recording. The whole video has nothing to do with animal stuff. But my understanding is when you do a screen record, if you don't time it correctly to cut it off at the right time, you start recording the next video that pops up because the video just pops up. They keep popping up. So the next video is that animal video that has some racist imageries. And apparently the staffer just didn't time it right and added the first couple seconds of the next video. And apparently when you're posting all these different videos all the time, you just you're not checking carefully to make sure it was cut at the right place, and they just posted the whole thing. So like there was no intention to actually post any of the animal video at all. It was the first video. I mean, if you're trying to actually show those images, you will actually post a full animal video. That wasn't the point. It was just the first video.
About election integrity.
It was about election integrity.
Let me just say this, too. Number one, we all know that the President of the United States is not sitting around all day with nothing to do and putting together, social media clips or whatever. But he's very active on social media. And I will say, as a Christian and as a pastor, do I like everything that our president posts on social media? No. I think sometimes the language he uses is inappropriate. I think sometimes it comes across, attacking people or attacking their character or whatever. I don't like it. Just to be clear, from a pastoral perspective, from a biblical perspective, I think he shoots himself in the foot many, many times with that whole social media thing. On the other hand, I've appreciated the fact that he's not afraid to take on his enemies. And let me just be clear, lest we forget, he's had 2 assassination attempts. He's had 40-some lawsuits that have been lawfare. They have no substance to them, but it was designed to keep him from running for president of the United States. He has been hated. And as we have pointed from the beginning, if we just pause here and use some common sense, if you just ask yourself, why has there been nonstop attack on Donald Trump since he decided to declare he was running for president? We've said this. If you just pay attention, you will find out that maybe people fear Donald Trump because Donald Trump has the power to expose all of this corruption and all of this nonsense we've been seeing in the political establishment for years and years and years. And if you just look at it objectively, because when he said he was running at first, I was not, out here clapping hands and doing cartwheels, neither were you. We had a lot of questions. We had a lot of concerns about where he stood on a lot of issues. But the one thing that was so obvious to us was, why is this man being so vehemently assaulted by everybody who is a power broker? And I think all you got to do is go to Minnesota for exhibit number one. All you got to do is look at all the corruption that Elon Musk and his team exposed. I mean, I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg. But my point is, back to this. There are people that hate his guts and are looking to exploit everything they can, especially the false narrative that somehow he's racist. So it doesn't surprise me. What surprises me, though, is how quickly, especially pastors, are to distance themselves or to feel like they have to make some statement. They got to put something on their page to distance themselves from something that they have not taken the proper time to let the truth come out. And that's equally wicked. When we slander people or when we make false judgments about people without all the facts, that is a wicked thing from a biblical perspective. Like, we should know better than to take the bait. And I think that's where, virtue signaling at its essence is really more about me protecting my reputation, or what I think is my reputation, than it is about promoting righteousness or justice. When I have to post a meme that shows I'm with you guys, when I have to go march in a parade that shows I'm feeling sympathetic to your cause, when I have to write a check to show that I'm really behind your organization, when I have to make a statement on my Facebook page about how this person's evil or bad, at the end of the day, I have to check my own motives and say, why am I doing this? Am I doing this because I'm trying to protect my reputation, or am I doing this because, from a biblical perspective, this is truly evil or wicked? And then the larger question is, then what am I going to do about it? I love what Allie Beth Stuckey shared here. She said, it's not that I don't think you can criticize Trump as a Christian leader. It's just that I find your criticism suspect if the only time you pipe up about politics is when Trump or Republicans have done something you don't like. Abortion and the genital mutilation of kids aren't enough to generate public outrage, but Trump's tweets are. The only time we can count on your voice is when liberals are angry, but never to call out the injustice of vaccine mandates, pregnancy centers being firebombed, or the Biden administration taking school lunches away from schools who wouldn't go along with the trans madness. That's just going to make it tough for me to take your outcry seriously. To which I say a hearty amen. I mean, we've had so many major attacks on our basic liberties and freedoms over the last 4 years under the Biden administration that what'd you hear from a lot of these pastors? Crickets, nothing. What'd you hear when the government was shutting down our churches? Nothing. What'd you hear when people were losing their jobs over vaccine mandates? Nothing. What about all this transgender madness? Wouldn't speak out about it. What about homosexuality and sexual sin in general in the church? Nope, we don't want to touch on those things. So it kind of rings a little hollow when you make your tweet about a supposed video that at the end of the day really doesn't produce any change anywhere. It just helps you feel better about yourself. That you're distancing yourself from that bad person over there. And I think, again, we've got to go to Scripture. I took the time to bring up some principles here that I thought might be good for us to discuss. Proverbs 18:13. If one gives an answer before he hears, it's folly and shame. So judging or responding without hearing the full story is always foolish, shameful, and immature. And again, in the social media world, quickness matters. If you want everybody to like your post, you can't be the person that waits a week before the truth comes out. You've got to be the guy that's Johnny on the spot, right? You got to be the guy with the quick post. But that's not what the Bible teaches. Jesus said, judge with not by appearances, but judge with right judgment. John chapter 7, verse 24. So, and again, important to have the facts. How about this one? Deuteronomy 13, verse 14, you shall inquire, investigate, and search out the matter thoroughly. Again, not jumping to quick conclusions. Don't accept single reports. Don't act without verification. Don't judge until the evidence is confirmed. Don't move emotionally, but move carefully. James chapter 1, verse 19, be slow to speak and slow to anger. Once again, when we make quick judgments, they're usually emotional, and then those emotional judgments do not cause healing, they cause destruction, anger. So we need to listen deeply and we respond slowly. I like this one, 1 Corinthians 4, verse 5. Don't pronounce judgment before the time. So we don't want to be guessing people's motives, assuming their intentions, interpreting people without facts, or playing God with somebody's story. I've got a number of other verses here, but the point is very clear. When we speak out against somebody without knowing the truth, we're actually guilty of murdering their reputation. The commandment, thou shalt not murder, was not just killing somebody physically. It also had to do with their integrity, their reputation, their character. So if I start spreading rumors about you or anybody else, I'm actually committing murder against your person, your identity, your character. And I think that happens far too often in our culture today. So thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think what Allison Beth Stuckey is saying to these supposed Christian leader is, what platform are you speaking from? Because if you're speaking from the platform that she would consider biblical, it makes no sense to only address a certain issue. It comes off as you're not speaking from a biblical mandate, you're speaking from a democratic talking point. To which point, then just be a democratic, right, a spokesperson. Don't say that as a pastor. And this is an issue I think we all need to consider, because it's easy to cheer for our team. It's easy to jump on a bandwagon and excuse our guy while attack the other guy. But we have to practice introspection to look at ourselves and say, am I just defending this person because I like this person? Or am I just attacking them because I hate it? And that's a level of introspection I just think no one really practices anymore, to say, well, if I really believe this is what the Bible teaches, let me apply that equally across everywhere. I mean, going back to the Billie Eilish, whatever her name is, comment is this is what she really believes, that everything's stolen land and no one's illegal. By that principle, she should allow anyone they want to come to your house and sleep in your house and sleep in your bedroom, because no one's illegal.
No borders.
There's no trespassing is not a thing anymore.
No boundaries. Nobody should have a door on their house. Nobody should lock the doors.
If you're saying that is not reasonable, and I actually like my privacy, and I think it's actually good that I have doors on my house, then how does that apply to doors to states, or doors to other properties, or doors to nations?
Yeah.
But no one's really thinking on those levels. And I think all these back and forth are simply challenging people to think, what is the first principle you actually believe in? We're not even saying your first principle is right or wrong. You're not even consistent with it. So you, by being inconsistent with your principle, like we see in this case, that like you're speaking about these issues, but not these four other issues that other followers of Scripture says are super important, then you really don't have a mandate to speak on these things.
And that's my fundamental issue too, is we say a lot here at Living Stones, you need to keep the main thing the main thing. We need to do that theologically. We don't want to get off on minor doctrines where people get argumentative about it, and causes division and strife. Our goal is to keep our target before us, and I think it's the same thing with these things. When you have no outrage, for instance, over the millions and millions of murdered babies in this country, you're quiet about that. but you are outraged over, whatever's in the news cycle. You're outraged because ICE arrested somebody who's, trying to run them over with a car. Your priorities are majorly jacked up. Like there's a whole lot of other things that you should be angry about from a biblical perspective that really matter. That's probably down on the list. Not that you couldn't have some legitimate concerns over due process and et cetera, but it's like I feel like our priority system gets way out of whack. And the things we should be most concerned about, we're not. And the things that we shouldn't be this concerned about, get blown out of proportion. That's a problem. Also, I saw a pastor, well-known pastor, who was basically trying to say, let's get out of our echo chambers, basically our Democrats or our Republicans, and let's just be like extricate ourselves from all of that. And as you and I pointed out, that's not wise either. We don't want to just assume that whatever label we're in, that everything that party does is great. Of course, we don't believe that. Every party is subject to power and to control and to greed and corruption. And I think we've been clear about that. But at the end of the day, what we aren't saying is, just extricate yourself from everything that's going on in the world. No, unfortunately, we have two choices every time we elect somebody, two parties. We should be involved in those parties. We should be raising up great candidates. We should care about justice. We should care about righteousness. If Gavin Newsom's saying F Trump and Trump saying F Gavin Newsom, both of them are wrong, using crude language like that, obscene language. We should be speaking into all of those things. But at the end of the day, we do have to look at every single policy issue from a biblical perspective, and we still have to stay engaged. So it's not enough just to say, stay out of this and let's just be the church. No, that is being the church. It's making a difference and speaking into these issues and hopefully bringing salt and light and some balance to these situations. So I'm with you on that. So what does this look like? I wanted to highlight a few things. Principles as far as a spiritual leader or godly leader's response to sensational headlines. First one, slow down. We need to be quick to hear and slow to speak, the Bible says. Secondly, we got to investigate things, so we need to search out matters thoroughly, Deuteronomy 13.
No one does that, by the way.
Exactly, because that's the problem. None of this is fast. All of this takes time. The truth does take time to be brought to the light. But it eventually gets to the light, and that's the problem. You miss a lot of the headlines by waiting. Refuse to be emotionally manipulated. And I just want to say, like even during Black Lives Matter, say Black Lives Matter, say Black Lives Matter. Of course, Black lives matter. We love every black person in our church, and we love them because of who they are in Christ. We love them because they're made in the image and likeness of God. It's almost like stupid, like we get that, but I'm not going to parrot that. But there was this impulse back then. If you weren't racist, you had to promote something from the BLM movement itself. I took the time as a point of a teaching point here to actually go to the BLM website and realize that this was not just a group that was concerned about, black Americans being treated without racism or being treated fairly. This was a Marxist front. This was a Marxist organization. And you looked at all the things that they stood for, the destruction of the nuclear family and all these things that were Marxist. It was all sugar-coated and whitewashed with the whole BLM stuff. Then we find out that the folks that actually were the leaders of that movement took most of the money and bought houses and other things, and some of them have been indicted, and some of them are going to go to jail for that. But I can't tell you how many pastors were marching in the parade, wearing a T-shirt, making donations, doing all kinds of crazy stuff, feeling like they had to somehow show that they were on the right side of the issue, when the right side of the issue was the biblical side of the issue. And it didn't involve any of that, and certainly didn't involve the $2 billion worth of damaged property that we saw as the city in Minneapolis burned to the ground. So these are I think what we're trying to say today is there's a different way to do this, and it's a biblical way, and it's important that we don't swing the pendulum to the other side and get involved in knee-jerk reactions. Share with me the quote that you had. We can maybe close with this. This is very disturbing. This was rhetoric that's coming from an elected leader, I believe in the state of Texas. Is that right? And this perfectly epitomizes the kind of language and speech that should not be happening from anybody, let alone elected officials in places of authority and power.
Yeah, I believe in this whole fiasco. Elon Musk made this post of a video that was made by Jing Wu. He's a Chinese-American representative, state of Texas. He's a minority leader, I think. And he essentially are saying, paraphrasing, he says, non-whites share the same oppressor, and since we're non-whites are not the majority now, we can take over the country. So just a very, very clear delineation between whites and non-whites.
Which is racist.
Which is racist.
We're dividing Americans on the basis of their skin color is racist in and of itself.
I guess I just don't see myself through the lens of Asian or whatever. I just refused. I didn't
know you were Asian until last year.
I'm Asian. That's fine. I joke about Asian stuff like that. But if someone makes fun of Asian race because of legitimate things that Asian race struggle with, I'm not going to be like, you're a racist. I'll be like, oh, you see that too? Because Asian people make fun of Asian people.
One of the things I have to say that I enjoy about your preaching is your ability to poke fun at your own ethnicity, and we all have things.
I'm not even trying to poke fun of it. I'm just sharing what really happens. I'm not even trying to. I'm above the fray of all that. I mean, just the whole race thing just takes me off. Anyways, I won't get into all that, but essentially he's saying, well, whites and non-whites. Well, so here's my question to Mr. Wu.
Yeah.
What are whites? Because you could be a white, light-skinned Hispanic and you look white.
Yeah.
Or you could be a light-skinned black person whose parents are,
what about a biracial family?
How about biracial? How about someone who just immigrated from Poland, from South Africa, from Australia? Are they considered white oppressors? What are you talking about by white? There's so many things that is unanswered when you say whites. And if I was a white person, I'll be like, whoa, what does that even mean? Because, a white person whose ancestors been in America,
But to that quote again, this is someone who has been an elected official. They're using the oppressed language, so they're assuming somehow that white people are oppressing all minorities or people of color.
But because you're white. Not because of your ancestry. You're not even talking about specific slave owners. Just say, some kid who immigrated to the United States 3 weeks ago. Well, you're automatically oppressive because you're white.
Obviously incredibly dangerous because there are people that will hear what he has to say and go up to some random person that has a lighter skin color than theirs and commit all kinds of acts of violence.
Even without that in your mind, you're just saying, well, that guy's an oppressor. Well, you have no clue. Maybe this kid has been a victim of racism by whatever his community his whole life. You have no clue what his history, his background is. You're judging them by the color of the skin, not the content of their character or what they've been through, or even their heritage or anything. It's like the most like judging a book. Don't we say you don't judge a book by a cover? Like that statement is so that. So anyway, the point is, where is the outrage on stuff like that? Where are our pastors speaking out on issues on that?
According to critical race theory, we don't even have the right to say that we're oppressed or that was racist because we're the wrong color to be able to say that. So again, there's a lot of this poison's coming out of our universities. It doesn't make any sense. It's not rational, coherent. It's not livable. It's not all the things that we talk about on this podcast as being a good worldview. But that should be deeply concerning. And these are the types of things that we need to speak out about. In fact, a black person who's a believer should be speaking out on that kind of statement and saying, what is this?
Or an Asian person. I guess I am an Asian person. To speak on that and be like, it doesn't even make sense. It's just rhetoric to inflame people, to get clicks. It's not logical. It doesn't make sense. You apply it to a real person. A real person. You go to a random person, a white person on the street and says, you're oppressor.
Yeah, and they're going, what? I'm just I'm just trying to go out and get a cup of coffee. What are you talking about?
Like, I mean, there are oppressive people, but I will say there'll be oppressors in any colors. And you go back a couple thousand years ago, you got different. So it's just a mess. Anyways,
but it is a worldview paradigm.
Yeah.
That is important that we understand, that is being placed over the argument, the description, and so forth. And I think what we're trying to say in our podcast today is we've got to rise above this type of behavior in the church. Like, this should not be happening in the church among believers, where we're falling for the clickbait. We're getting emotionally and angry. Well, how come my pastor didn't say something about whatever? It's like, okay, time out.
This is all I'm gonna say is, if America is homogenous in race, I'm not saying it should be. I like it or not, but say it is. Say we're a completely different country that's like China. Everyone's like Japan. The same. Japan. There, we will still find reason to divide and hate each other. If it's not this, it's something else.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's human nature.
But you just got to recognize that's what the elites do. They divide us based on whatever they have. It's not like, oh, you just get rid of all the white people, everything will be harmonious. It won't happen. You get rid of all the black people. It doesn't work like that. There will always be used things to divide us. So let's not let that divide us.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's be people, again, that promote biblical justice. Let's move in wisdom and discernment. And I just want to say, too, to any folks that maybe are attending a church, don't assume that your pastor doesn't care, or that your pastor is a racist because he doesn't stand in the pulpit on Sunday and distance himself from whatever. Trust that we're trying to look at the situation. We're trying to wait for the truth to come out. The truth always takes time. And realize, as you pointed out, Pastor Andrew, there are people who are using these things to manipulate the masses for power. It's all about power. It's all about control.
And why do I respond to everything that Donald Trump tweets? Like, he's not my God. He's not my boss. He's not my... I don't need to defend it. I voted for the guy, but I mean, he's not perfect, and he's going to make mistakes. And why do I have to defend every one of his actions just because I voted for him? Did everyone defend every one of Biden's decision? Like, I can't possibly do that. So,
right.
So even that is like, there's so much things that just sucks energy from us.
I love what you said on Sunday. Maybe this is a good place to stop. You said one of your goals was to stop obsessing over things that were outside of your control.
Yeah.
And I think most of our listeners can probably relate to this. We watch the news, we get angry, we get fired up, we hear somebody say something stupid, we feel like we got to go defend it or whatever. And a lot of these things are completely outside of our control. And we're better people if we just say, you know what? I'm going to work on loving people. I'm going to work on being a person of righteousness. I want to live in the kingdom. I want to love my brothers and sisters irregardless of their color. I want to model in church on Sunday, for instance, I want to model what the kingdom of God looks like. Red and yellow, black and white. We're all here together. We're all at the foot of the cross. We're all worshiping Jesus. Let's focus on what we can control, not get all inflamed, irritated, angry, whatever, out of control about things that literally are out of our control. That was a good word.
That's one of the most powerful demonic attack. Like, people don't think it's a spiritual. This is like demonic attack is to get you to take all your energy to tweet, to post, to get fired up, to be angry about things you have zero control, or like almost like 0.01% control over. It's like, I made a tweet. You didn't change anything. Right. And then what we do is the things that we should be good stewards of, the things we should be practicing good habits. We should be caring, focus on our kids, on our family, our work, and whatever. Because we're so upset, we're so exhausted, we're so full of anxiety and frustration, we end up doing a bad job on. That's just a very, very practical attack on our lives. So I need to learn how to do that.
I love it. That's good wisdom for all of us. So thank you guys for tuning in. I know we went a little longer today, but hopefully this is something that is very relevant for all of us. And I hope the content was helpful today. So we'll look forward to seeing you next Thursday.